Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. I think we have a good forum of people here now. So let me start by introductions. So my name is John Harris. I am the sales director for the Americas. Joining me on the presentation today is also Simon, who is our product manager. And he's going to be giving you some demonstrations of what our products do. So our agenda today is to look at what we're trying to do with Edit on Demand. And your first thoughts may be, why are we involved in that? You may think obviously specifically about Avid in that scenario. And we're intending to take you through very different workflow examples that take you through Edit on Demand, whether it's expanding your land-based setup, whether it is being exclusively focused in the cloud, or whether it's going to be into a hybrid cloud environment. So we've got this agenda that we can go through that's going to take us, roughly 20 minutes from this point in time. Just to let you know, we will be taking questions and answers during the presentation. If you can use your Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen, and we'll attempt to either answer those questions live, or we may choose to actually respond to those at the end of the seminar and go through those questions from there. So why Marquis and with Edit on Demand? And I think what we've seen now is a very strong technological and industry change to start using the cloud for our editing capabilities. And Avid is obviously one of those key ones. That means not only are we now suddenly able to grow our facilities or even start our facilities in the cloud, removing the need for that expensive premises, that expensive infrastructure, that we're so used to with traditional ones, that also causes, big issues financially with depreciations, etc. We can literally switch on a facility and switch it off as and when we need it. Probably one of the things that's really holding us back are those black words in the form of egress. That's egress and time. And typically the issues that we're hearing about is understanding how to manage the egress and make it efficient. How do we get our projects back out of the cloud when they're finished, and how we can use those scenarios. Where that takes with ourselves is gives us the ability now to actually manage those projects in a much more better discipline area. Throughout our presentation, we're going to talk to you about how we can upload to the cloud, how we can work with multi-res file structures, how we can minimize the egress, and actually reduce time and fundamentally cost in doing that process. And I think we're all discovering cloud at this moment in time. We recognize the benefits, but we need the tools to help us to manage that and be more efficient into that process. So going into that, what we're going to do is focus on those elements, and we're going to lead forward very shortly with Simon's going to take us through the various scenarios described earlier on. So we're going to look at the synchronization to the cloud, managing the project at the end of the cloud, and also just how we can expand our land productions into the Canva process. So on that note, I'd like to hand over to Simon, who will then pick up and start some presentations from there. Thank you, Simon.
Thanks, John, and hello, everyone. So what I'll go through today is some examples of our workflows with the EOD in those three areas that we mentioned. And the first workflow I'll show you then is based around a process syncing content from a ground-based system into an EOD instance. This process will use the Marquis workspace sync jobs, and it will link into our Photon Flight remote location service, which will run in EOD. I'll show you the principles we used within our workflow, and then I'll also show you a comparison of a standard EOD workflow and how the two will compare and the potential savings that can be made with the Marquis-based workflow. In this example, for the synchronization, I'll show you a system that's based around ingest into a ground-based system, and then an automated upload from that system into the EOD environment. Now we're doing this using our workspace sync and the Photon Flight, and we're making sure we push through content that's going into the ground system into the EOD system. And this is an automated process. It will send up everything we find in the workspace into the EOD instance. There's no need for user interactions once it's set up. So it's not a manual upload process, not a manual uploader. The user doesn't need to manually choose what to go into the EOD and set it going. So it's a very different process from the standard upload tool that you'd often use with EOD. To make this happen, we're using our workspace sync job on the on-premise system. And this is our tool which allows us to take synchronization copies of workspaces. And we can link that in to the Photon Flight remote location service, which will be running on an EOD instance. This service is a very lightweight service, but it allows us to see workspaces within the EOD and use them within the local workspace sync as if they are local workspaces. So this allows us to make a mapping between the on-premise workspaces and the EOD workspaces and do that synchronization between the two. Now, obviously, we can also use this the other way, and we can use it to bring content back down again, or items back down again, just by reversing the process. In this example, we're going through using that process to send project files back. So the content and everything will be going up. We'll be sending the updates at the project level back into the on-premise system. Now, if I look at how this kind of workflow would come together in a conventional EOD environment, we'll see first off, there's a gradual buildup of content during the ingest phase as the items are being brought into the on-premise system and chosen by the user and pushed up to EOD and manually triggering the uploads. Once everything is there, the EOD instance is ready for the work to commence and that project can actually start work. And once the production is complete, there'll be another phase where the production is finished and all necessary tidying actions are carried out on the EOD instance. And this will consume an amount of time and will potentially add in egress charges as items are brought down. And eventually you'll get to a point where the EOD instance can be turned off. If we compare that to the workflow that we can offer using the workspace sync, we'll see that the ingest phase will come through into the on-premise system. But as soon as content is coming in, the sync job will be able to start pushing it up into EOD, and we'll be able to carry on doing that on a regular basis as the ingest is going through. So the content will get up into EOD a lot quicker, and there's no manual process to it. It's all automatic. And with the reverse path, we have to send any changes at the project level back down into the main system. And so this allows us to bring everything through. And when we get to the end of the project, we can actually shut down the EOD instance almost immediately. There's no particular egress required. There's no egress cost. At the end of the process, both systems will have exactly the same content within them. So there's 2 copies of the same item. So there's no need to do any processing, additional processing at the end of the project. The systems can effectively just be turned off. Looking at those side by side, we'll see the standard process we have for the EOD workflow, and compared to the workspace sync-based workflow, see the ingest period is greatly shortened as everything will go up as soon as it's ingested. The actual production time, that will stay the same because they're doing the same amount of work, same amount of editing work. When we get to the end, we'll start to see the real savings. So at this point in time, there is no ramp down period. The instance can effectively be turned off. So there's time savings based around the subscription, and there's savings in terms of the storage and the egress will come from the system. So this is a very real saving that can be made in terms of the resources that it required. You can plug some numbers into that and do a comparative analysis at that point, and then you'll start to see the kind of the levels of savings that can be made. And in this simple example, we're seeing savings of about 33% just by running through on this different process and different method of managing the media. And obviously, this is again very real potential savings you can make. If I look at that in terms of a summary, this is transforming the project efficiency within the EOD environment using the workspace sync. That accelerated ingest will get content up quickly, get content up easily, doesn't require any manual user interaction, and can be working 24 hours a day. And then there's no post-project ramp down, there's no additional media egress charges, and there's no waste of those service credits for your EOD. And actually, while we've done this, we've also managed to create a complete business continuity copy. You have the full system running, full project content running in the on-premise system and in the EOD instance with the changes being pushed back. So you actually have a complete business continuity solution during this period as well. This is all a fully automated set and forget process. It's all set up and configured and runs in the background without any requirement from the users either on-premise or in EOD. This is a truly automated solution. Now I can show you a quick demonstration of those two components that we're using. In the EOD, we have the photon flight service. As I mentioned, this is a very lightweight service, and the only configuration that's really required is to put in port numbers and user accounts that we'll use in the communications between the two systems. Once it's running, it actually will then allow the mounted workspaces in the EOD to become visible to the controlling system we have at the other end of the workflow. So the workspace sync will be able to access and use the workspaces in EOD as if they are local workspaces. If I look at that from the other end, we'll see for the workspace sync, all we have to do is configure the connection into that EOD photon flight. And that's just a matter of putting in the connection details and the ports we've set up and the users, and then choosing to make sure that we're using the workspaces that we find in that location. And as soon as that's saved, those workspaces will become usable for my jobs. So I can add in a new sync job and make a pair between the on-premise and the cloud workspace. So I'll go through and choose a local workspace. And for my destination, I'll choose one of the workspaces we're reading back from that EOD instance. And that makes my mapped pair between those workspaces. For the job, we can do it as a single workspace, or in this case, we'll do it as two workspaces. So I'll pick another local one. And I'll send that to a different workspace in EOD and save that. And so we've now mapped a pair of workspaces with a pair of workspaces in EOD. And then all I need to do is set how often the job's going to run. So we'll send it running 7 days a week. And for this one, we'll set it going early in the morning and repeating itself every 60 minutes until late in the evening. So as soon as this job is set, we'll start processing that workspace and sending it to EOD. It will happen every hour, 7 days a week. So it really is that simple. As soon as it's set, you'll now start getting synchronized copies of those workspaces. The second area that I was going to show today is about the project management when things are actually in EOD, and this is using our project parking application. Now, project parking is ideal to allow you to quickly archive EOD-based projects and do so with a full version history. And that can go to a variety of locations, depending on what your requirement is, be it to another cloud storage system or back to the main premises. And when that archive has been completed, you'll then have the option to bring things back and choose which version to bring everything back from. And this really allows you to easily share those EOD-based projects with the on-premise systems. Now, project parking, when it's working, will allow us to go through and access the media and the projects based in the EOD production. So in this example, we'll have the ingest coming in directly into EOD, and you'll have your project you're working on. And project parking can be configured to automatically create regular archives of that content in that project. And that will send it off to your chosen location and create an archive, which will have all of the media and the project information from the EOD instance. Any changes that happen on the main system will then get reflected and sent across. So we'll send through deltas for the media and a new project. And this is where we'll build up the version history of project files. And this can be used for, you can use this for backup purposes. You can use it to park a stalled production, which you could send off to the archive and bring back in the future and start your production again. You can use it as a true archive once the production is completed, or it can be used as a distribution mechanism. The archive we create is completely self-contained and portable, so it's a very useful tool for distribution as well. When you've actually completed your work in EOD, project parking has already saved off the project and the media in the external location, so there's no final egress required from the EOD. You can actually just simply shut down your EOD instance. So there's no additional charges for the storage time, for the EOD usage, or any extra egress. If you need to bring it back again and work on it in the future, then that's just a question of opening a project parking instance in EOD, connecting to your archive location and restoring the required project version that you want. And that will bring back the exact media required from the exact project version that you wanted. And ultimately, you can then set project parking to do updates back to that archive again. So as items are changing in that phase of production, the archives can go back and get updated with the new versions. So this means there's no need for permanent EOD instance. You can actually really only use it when you actually need it and turn it off when you don't. If I look at an example of this, we can look at a project where the customer will go through a recurring project and they'll be expecting to do 6 weeks of work every 3 months. In a standard EOD scenario, you'll find the ingest period will have the ramp up as content is gradually ingested into the production. That's production time while the editing is going on, and then the period at the ramp down when everything's finished up, tidied up, and getting ready for the instance to be turned off. When the production happens again in 3 months' time, then they'll go through exactly the same phases. The ingest will be the same, and that ramp down will be the same as well. By use of project parking, the first time that we run, the ingest is obviously the same, but at the end, there is no ramp down. Everything has already been sent off to your chosen location. And when you come back to do the production again, this time the ingest is now going to be a lot quicker. We're just going to bring back the content that's come back from that archive. And at the end, again, there'll be no egress period and no ramp down. So there's another real saving available here. And you can plug numbers into this scenario as well. And that's where we get into a point where, again, we can see real savings coming through. In this case, we see 34% savings on using the project parking based workflow over a standard workflow. This is very real savings that can be offered at a cost level as well, just at a resource level. The final workflow in this area is the principle of allowing you to just extend your productions using EOD. And this allows you to extend the resources you have available to you by utilizing the EOD through project parking. So in this case, in this example that I'm showing, we have a production going on premise, and there's a point at which that needs to be expanded out. And so we would use project parking on premise to transfer the project and the media directly into EOD. Now you can choose how much to send. You can choose an entire project or individual bins, and you'll send that up directly into the EOD. And this is going to send everything through the photo flat connector again, but you'll be sending just what's needed into your EOD, and as soon as it is there, you'll be able to start using it. So you'll be able to use EOD as a resource for additional editing or additional distributed editing. And again, you're only going to need the EOD when it's actually required. It doesn't have to be permanently. You turn it on when it's needed, put the content in, and you turn it off when it's finished. If I look at that within the application itself, again, we just have to make a link into the photo flight that's running within the EOD. And then as soon as we have that connection, those workspaces will become usable by this controlling application. So we can choose the project, choose to transfer it. As I mentioned, we can choose how much to send, whether it's individual bins or an entire project. And then we'll just map it into one of the EOD workspaces, and we'll go through and send all of the content and the project files up to that workspace. In this case, as soon as I start that off, we'll do the transfer, and the project and media would become immediately online and usable within the EOD instance. And that can be set as a manual job. It can be set as a scheduled job to happen multiple times. It really is as simple as that. Now, as a companion piece of this, we'll go through some examples of kind of a hybrid cloud example. And we'll look at how those workflows come into the usage and the general usage of the products that we're talking about. So for example, within project parking, we have that ability to do the transfer into EOD. And we also have the ability to do that project management within the EOD. But the project parking can also just work with multiple cloud providers as well. So we can archive content to and from multiple cloud storage providers, depending on what's required for your particular needs. And we can even use that process to go through the sharing and the distribution of the projects through those cloud integrations. As I mentioned, those archives are all portable and complete, and are very useful means of getting content through into wider workflows. If I look at it from the workspace sync and the workspace level analysis as well, then obviously we have that ability to do the synchronizations to and from the EOD, but the same application could be doing backups and do true workspace backups. And those can go directly to cloud storage solutions, can go to different cloud storage solutions, and can do mixed with local storage as well. So you can build up a profile of potentially certain workspaces being backed up to local online storage, other workspaces going out of the building and up to cloud storage, depending on what's required for the individual workspaces. And we can even build this through in the way that some of our users have been doing to mix the two together. And we have a couple of users who would use the workspace sync to take a copy of their workspace and put it into another location for business continuity purposes. And we'll then run a backup process to cloud to back up the workspaces, but do it from that second copy. So they have a fully protected system with business continuity and backups, but actually minimizing the hit that they have on the Nexus by using that second option. So it's all very simple to build up, and it's all configured potentially from one instance of the application. Now we can also look how we can offer solutions in this area by using one of our other products, which is our Medway family of products. And Medway is our tool which allows us to run full media integration solutions. And we also have integrations for that to use with cloud, either as in storage or cloud hosting. If we look at in this example, this is actually using the Medway Engine web service and hosting that within, in this case, AWS. And this allows us to have true cloud hosted media processing. So I have an example here where we're actually doing the media processing within AWS of content and sending it directly through to an Amazon system based in Azure. Sorry, into an Avid system based in Azure. And as to go through as a direct ingest workflow. So the content can be sent through from the AWS system and will be ingested into the media composers directly running in Azure. And that can happen through a direct connection. It can happen through an acceleration provider. But from a user's point of view, they're getting the content between completely separate cloud providers. This example also, we're actually doing it as a proxy editing and relinking workflow, where that process in AWS would actually generate proxy content for use in Avid. And we'll have a secondary process where the Avid editors can work on that sequence and then send that sequence to us to go and highlight and pull back partials of the high-res material and bring that through and relink it inside the Avid so they can finish on the high-resolution copy. And this minimizes the media movement between the two systems to only at a high-res level being the exact content that's required for the workflow. So again, this is very efficient and minimizes the egress charges coming out of the first cloud provider. So it's a very powerful system to pull through, but again, shows that nature of the hybrid cloud solutions, where you're not necessarily held to one cloud provider, either at a service level or storage level. We can bring things together. That concludes my part of the presentation, so I shall hand back to John.
Thank you, Simon. That was a really good information. So we're just going to spend a little bit of time on some questions. As I mentioned earlier, if you do have questions, please post them in the Q&A panel and we will respond to them. But meanwhile, we've got a couple of questions that I'd like to pose to Simon. Simon, got a question here. Is when the cloud of the EOD project has finished, we mentioned return it back to the Nexus. Can we return it to other locations? And I've got a note here, specifically a standalone editor.
Yes, so in the workflow that I showed with the project parking running in the EOD, it can do a transfer, similar to the actual workflow I showed to get transfer content in. It can be working the other way to transfer content back and set another local Avid system as its target. So yes, you can bring it back to a completely different location from the source.
Excellent. So it doesn't require the original infrastructure. It can go to, it's an open architecture that can go to different infrastructures.
Yes, it's very open. As I say, even all the archives we created are designed to be self-contained. They have everything that's needed and also portable, so they can be used as a distribution tool as well. And you always have the option to bring things back to a different location from where it came from.
Thank you. Next question. We touched on project parking and the analytics. Can we use the analytics within the cloud storage to help us manage our cloud storage?
Yes, we can. I didn't really go into many details about that, but project parking includes the ability to go through and, as John said, do some analytics on the system where it will look through the storage and the projects and do a comparative analysis of both. That is just as valid an operation in an EOD-based system as it is on a ground-based system. It will be able to go through the workspace you give access to and the projects that we can see and do that comparative analysis of the two. and that will allow you to see the utilization of the systems, but would also give you some tools for media management as well in terms of duplicate handling, orphan handling, and even potentially going through the project deletions.
Cool. Thank you, Sam. And the final question, it looks like someone's thinking about cloud for remote productions and remote ingest. And the question they are asking, if I'm dealing in a scenario where I'm editing the cloud, but I'm ingesting remotely, what is the implication that if I have poor internet connection or, big latency issues or, maybe even dropout? How do we cope with that environment?
So the connection I showed into the Photon flight service running within EOD is designed to be tolerant of any latency issues. So latency isn't a concern for that connection. The system is very much designed to make the best of the connection that's available to it, even if that connection is poor. So it partially is designed to make the best of a low bandwidth connection, but it will also make the best out of a high bandwidth connection. In the event of any problems with complete interruptions, then the system is also designed to effectively carry on from where it left off the next time it runs. So it won't damage anything that was happening during the part of the problem, but will carry on again and just get itself up to date the next time it goes through those actions.
Cool, excellent. Thank you, Simon. I think that concludes Q&As. If we didn't answer your question, we will get an email back to you with more updates. But I think that gives us a good selection of questions just to review on that. So just to give you a little bit more news before we conclude. If you would like a demo or you'd like to have more information regarding the Marquis's products in regards to Edit on Demand, please do not hesitate to contact us. I'm going to give you a list of email addresses later on. In addition to that, we will be attending NAB. We have a stand there in the North Hall. So if you are going to NAB and you'd like to find more information, do come to us. If you want to pre-book a time, that would be great. And we're also doing some work on some partner stands as well. So one of our partners is Wasabi. So we will be doing some presentations of where we're going to be talking about hybrid cloud workflows and ransomware with utilizing Wasabi, which is an interesting partner for us in this scenario, because I mentioned earlier that black word of egress, and obviously Wasabi pricing model is based literally just on how many terabytes. They don't actually charge you for any egress charges. So there could be an interesting solution for ingest with the idea of migrating to Azure for the actual editing process. On that note, so here are our contact details. Thank you everyone for taking the time to go through the seminar. And as always, any questions, please do not hesitate to make contact. Thank you everyone, goodbye.